Look at your hands right now. Not later, not after this video ends. Right now. 10 small surfaces sitting at the ends of your fingers, and most people go their entire lives without truly seeing them. They notice a chipped edge, maybe a hangnail, something cosmetic, something temporary. But what you are looking at is not just keratin. It is a live record of your body's internal state. Changes in color, shape, texture, even growth speed can reflect processes happening deep inside you long before you feel anything is wrong. The question is not whether your body is sending signals. It always is. The real question is whether you know how to recognize them before they become something you can no longer ignore. A few years ago, someone posted a simple photo of their fingernails online. The nails looked slightly unusual, curved more than normal, almost like a smooth dome over the fingertips. The comments came quickly. People said it was genetics, nothing to worry about, maybe just a vitamin issue. Harmless explanations, reassuring, easy to accept. But one person responded differently. They didn't offer comfort. They said, "You need to see a specialist." Now, that single comment changed everything. The person went to get checked, not expecting much, but what they found was early-stage lung cancer. No pain, no obvious symptoms, nothing that would have pushed them to seek help on their own. Surgery was done in time. They survived. What's important here is not the diagnosis. It's the timing. The body had already begun to change, and the first visible sign wasn't in a scan or a blood test. It was on the nails. You may have heard this before. Maybe as a child. Maybe from someone pointing at your hand and sounding certain. White spots on your nails mean you are low on calcium. It sounds simple, almost logical. And that is exactly why it spread so easily. But it is not true. Those small white dots in most cases are not a signal of deficiency at all. They are the result of minor, often forgotten trauma to the nail matrix. Tiny disruptions that occurred weeks or even months ago. By the time you see the spot, the cause is long gone. The danger is not the spot itself. The danger is believing a myth, because once you misinterpret something basic, you begin to misread everything else your body is trying to show you. Over the past 15 years in clinical practice, I have learned something that textbooks do not emphasize enough. The body rarely stays silent. It speaks constantly, but it does not always speak loudly. It uses small changes, subtle shifts, things most people overlook because they do not seem important at the time. Nails are one of those places. I have seen patients walk in with no complaints, no pain, nothing they considered serious. And yet their nails were already telling a different story, not diagnosing on their own, but pointing quietly in a direction that deserved attention. When you begin to look at your body this way, not with fear, but with awareness, you stop reacting only when something is wrong, and you start noticing when something begins to change. To understand why nails can reflect so much about your health, you need to understand what they actually are. What you see on the surface, the hard plate, is only the end result of a process that begins underneath the skin, in a small but highly active structure called the matrix. This is where new nail cells are formed, and it is extremely sensitive to what is happening throughout your body. Changes in nutrition, oxygen levels, circulation, hormones, and inflammation can all influence how that matrix functions. As the nail grows outward, it carries a record of those conditions with it. In a way, your nail is not just a structure, it is a timeline. It takes several months for a nail to fully grow from base to tip, which means what you are seeing today may reflect something your body experienced weeks or even months ago. This is why subtle changes matter. They are not random. They are delayed signals from processes that have already been happening beneath the surface. Now, when it comes to reading those signals, color is often the first and most noticeable change. A healthy nail typically has a soft pink tone, smooth and consistent, reflecting stable blood flow beneath the surface. When that color shifts, it is worth paying attention, not jumping to conclusions, but not ignoring it either. Yellowing of the nails is one of the most common changes people notice. In many cases, it is related to a fungal infection, something that develops slowly and often goes untreated because it seems minor. But when multiple nails change at once, or when the texture also thickens and becomes distorted, it can point towards something more systemic, such as issues with lymphatic function or chronic inflammation. A bluish or gray tint, on the other hand, suggests reduced oxygen levels in the blood. This does not automatically mean something severe, but it does mean the body is not delivering oxygen as efficiently as it should. Pale nails, especially when the pink tone fades significantly, may reflect low hemoglobin levels or reduced blood flow. None of these signs should be used to diagnose yourself, but they should shift your attention. Because when color changes, it is rarely without a reason. Beyond color, shape is often where the most striking changes appear, and it is usually the first thing a trained eye notices. A healthy nail has a gentle, natural curve. Nothing extreme, nothing exaggerated. But when that shape begins to change, it can carry meaning. If the center of the nail dips inward, creating a shallow, spoon-like appearance, this is known as koilonychia. It is often associated with iron deficiency, not because the body suddenly fails, but because it prioritizes vital systems first. Blood production is preserved as long as possible, while peripheral structures like nails begin to reflect the strain earlier. On the opposite end, when the nail becomes more convex, curving outward in a rounded, almost glass-like shape, and the fingertip itself appears thicker or swollen, this is known as clubbing. It does not happen overnight, and it is not always easy to notice unless you are looking for it, but it can be associated with long-term changes in oxygenation or circulation. There is a simple comparison you can do by placing the nails of the same fingers from each hand together and observing the small space between them. In most people, a slight gap remains. When that gap disappears, it is not a diagnosis, but it is a reason to pay closer attention. Shape changes are not common, which is exactly why they matter when they do appear. The surface of the nail adds another layer to this story, one that many people overlook because the changes can seem subtle at first. Fine vertical ridges running from the base to the tip are often a normal part of aging, developing gradually over time as the matrix produces cells less evenly. But when surface changes happen quickly, or when they appear uneven, deeper, or accompanied by other symptoms, they can suggest something more. Horizontal grooves, known as Bowes lines, form when nail growth is temporarily interrupted. This can happen during periods of significant physical stress, illness, or even major emotional strain. The body shifts its resources toward survival, and nail production pauses. When growth resumes, the interruption is left behind as a visible line. Small indentations or pits across the surface can also appear, creating a texture that looks almost like tiny punctures. These are often associated with inflammatory conditions affecting the skin or immune system. Then there is the structure itself. Nails that become brittle, splitting, or peeling into layers may reflect dehydration, repeated chemical exposure, or issues with nutrient absorption. Nails that crumble or lose their integrity entirely often point toward deeper disruption, whether from infection or reduced circulation. Each variation tells a slightly different story, and the key is not to isolate one detail, but to notice patterns over time. The area around the nail is something most people ignore completely, yet it can reveal just as much as the nail itself. The skin along the edges and at the base is delicate, highly active, and closely connected to your body's ability to repair and protect itself. When this area becomes persistently red, swollen, or tender, especially across multiple fingers, it may reflect ongoing irritation, infection, or a deeper inflammatory response. Small tears in the skin, commonly called hangnails, are often dismissed as minor annoyances, but when they appear frequently, it can point to underlying issues such as nutrient imbalance or weakened skin integrity. The cuticle, often pushed back or trimmed for cosmetic reasons, actually serves as a barrier. When it is repeatedly damaged, it opens the door to infection and disrupts the environment where the nail forms. What seems like a small detail can become a repeating pattern if the underlying cause is not addressed. Another detail that rarely gets attention is how fast your nails grow. Most people never think about it, yet growth rate is one of the clearest indicators of how your body is functioning over time. Nails typically grow at a steady pace, but that pace is not fixed. It can slow down when metabolism decreases, when circulation is reduced, or when the body is under prolonged stress. It can speed up when metabolic activity increases, though faster growth does not always mean healthier structure. What matters is consistency. If you notice that your nails are growing significantly slower than they used to, or if one hand shows a clear difference from the other, it may reflect changes in blood flow or systemic function. It is a quiet signal, but like everything else the body does, it happens for a reason. Now shift your attention to your feet, because this is where many people stop looking entirely, and where some of the most important signals appear first. The toes are the farthest point from your heart, which means they depend heavily on consistent, healthy circulation. When something begins to go wrong with blood flow, oxygen delivery, or metabolic balance, the feet often show it earlier than anywhere else. Nails on the toes naturally grow more slowly and are thicker, but when they become excessively thick, distorted, or begin to change color, it should not be dismissed as just aging. Fungal infections are common, especially in warm, enclosed environments, but when left untreated, they can break down the structure of the nail and the surrounding skin. In people with reduced circulation or elevated blood sugar, even small breaks in the skin can become serious complications over time. Pay attention to how your toenails look, but also how your feet feel. A simple test is to gently press on the nail of your big toe until it turns pale, then release. The color should return quickly. If it takes longer than expected, it may suggest that blood flow is not as efficient as it should be. This is not about creating fear. It is about recognizing that small changes in the feet can reflect larger processes that deserve attention. At this point, you might be thinking there is too much to remember, too many details to track. But this does not need to be complicated. What matters is having a simple system you can return to, something consistent that builds awareness over time. Start by looking at your nails under good lighting, ideally natural light, so you can see true color without distortion. Take a moment to observe whether the tone is even or if something has shifted. Then look at the base of the nail, where the growth begins, and notice if anything about that area has changed. Run your finger lightly across the surface to feel for ridges, grooves, or texture differences that were not there before. Pay attention to the shape, whether it remains gently curved or has become more concave or convex. Press lightly on the edge to sense if the nail feels strong or if it bends and splits easily. Look at the skin surrounding the nail for signs of irritation, dryness, or repeated tearing. Do not forget your feet, where changes can be easier to miss, but more significant over time. And finally, notice how quickly your nails grow from week to week. Not precisely, but generally. This is not about diagnosing yourself. It is about becoming familiar with your baseline so that when something changes, you recognize it early. Most of what you will ever notice on your nails is harmless. Small changes, minor variations, things that come and go without consequence. But not everything falls into that category. And the difference between something ordinary and something worth attention often comes down to one simple thing: whether you notice it early or ignore it until it becomes impossible to overlook. Your body is not trying to confuse you. It is constantly adjusting, responding, and signaling in ways that are subtle but consistent. Nails are just one of the places where those signals become visible. You do not need to become an expert, and you do not need to assume the worst every time something looks different. What matters is that you stop dismissing the small details that repeat or change over time. Because awareness is not fear. It is a form of respect for your own health. If this made you pause and look at your hands differently, share it with someone who might never think to do the same. Sometimes the smallest shift in attention is what leads someone to take action when it matters most.